Cape Cod Broadcasting weaves the listening environments of 99.9 WQRC, Ocean 104.7, WFCC Classical 107.5, Cape Country 104, and CapeCon.com's website experience to reflect the lifestyles of the people who live, work, and play on Cape Cod. We hope that you enjoy this podcast.
Good morning. I'm Laura Reckford, and this is Sunday Journal. I'm here in the studio with Dr. Gregory Skomel, shark scientist with the Division of Marine Fisheries. Greg, welcome to the show.
Nice to be here, Laura.
So we've just heard in the news rather recently that on this past Saturday, the first shark sighting in ocean waters off the coast of Cape Cod. Tell us about that sighting and what that means to you. Is it a little later this year than usual?
No, actually, our sightings typically start coming in late June or even early July, so this is not all that unusual. It's pretty much right on time. And again, this is our first sighting off the east side of Cape Cod, where we're doing most of our white shark research. So it kicks off the season for us in terms of the studies we'll be conducting.
And this particular shark, do you have some of the stats on the shark, the size and so forth?
Well, we're going to go back to our footage, which we haven't done just yet, and get a more accurate sense of its size. We think it's somewhere in the 14 or 15 foot range. We know it's a female. We know we had previously tagged it because it actually has a tether on it from one of the tags that we put on it over the course of the last few years. So we're hoping to identify who this individual is and get a better sense of its history around Cape Cod.
And that brings us to your tagging project, which has been going on now for 5 years, is it? And tell us about how that started and so forth.
Well, we started tagging white sharks off the coast of Cape Cod, and primarily, again, in the Chatham, Monomoy area back in 2009. And over the course of those 5 years, we've gotten 38 tags out on white sharks. And the sharks have pretty much ranged in size from about 8 feet up to about 18 feet long, with most in the 12 to 14 foot size range. And remarkably, most of them also are females. And why they're all females, I don't know, but we know at least 90% of them were females. And these tags are basically telling us the movements of the animal, its ecology, its behavior over multiple scales. And what I mean is, when I say that is that we're learning about their behavior around Cape Cod, but we're also learning about where they're going when they leave Cape Cod.
And that's been very interesting because I think it was just a few weeks ago you had the tag saying that the shark was quite a bit further down south. Was that right? There was one
Yes.
of your tag sharks was where was it at that point?
Well, with 5 of the tags that we've got out are remarkable tags that tell us where the sharks are in almost real time. So whenever the sharks come up to the surface, they report to a satellite, and we can figure out where they are. And we know for a fact that at least 3 of our sharks are still down south at a time of year when we would expect them to be coming close to the Cape and moving up into the Gulf of Maine. So we know that one of them is in the Gulf of Mexico, one of them is down off of North Carolina, and one of them's off Florida. So we're seeing some remarkable behavior in almost real time. And what's great is folks can also watch the behavior of these sharks if they go to the OSearch website, www.ocearch.org. They can follow these movements as well.
And that's been very popular, I think, hasn't it? People following the sharks and also as an educational opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, bringing the public into the research has been a lot of fun for us, and OSearch has opened those doors. So folks can watch what these sharks are doing, and that website gets literally hundreds of thousands of hits every time one of these sharks goes in a direction we don't expect it to.
And another group you've been working very closely with is the Atlantic White Shark Conservancy, and they're helping with the funding for this newest study. Tell us about that group and how that group started.
Well, I can thank the Conservancy for making much of the research we're doing this year and much of what we did last year possible. Cynthia Wigrin is the executive director of the Conservancy. She started this nonprofit just over a year ago, and in doing so, she has provided the vehicle for us to raise the funds to get this research done. Virtually all of the work that we're doing comes from external sources. It's not paid for by the division. So the Conservancy makes that happen. It's Cynthia's hard efforts both during the season and the off season to raise this money that has made it possible.
And it seems like this research is quite important because in some ways we're really in the infancy of knowing about these animals. Is that true?
Absolutely. You could turn on the TV and see white sharks being filmed in other parts of the world, and scientists have been studying these animals in those other parts of the world. A good example is South Africa or Australia or even the Farallon Islands, where researchers have spent literally decades studying great white sharks. So we know a lot about the species in those areas. But when it comes to the Atlantic Ocean, we know very, very little about the great white shark. It is a very elusive animal, and it's not until our recent efforts that we have now predictable access to this animal and the opportunity to study it, its behavior, its natural history, its ecology, its movements over multiple scales for the very first time.
And I think after this interview, in fact, you're going to head out on one of the boats and start looking this week. How does that process work? You work with a spotter pilot to look for the sharks?
Yeah, this summer we're taking a different approach. The last 5 summers we've really placed a lot of emphasis on tagging these sharks, and we've got 38 out there. This summer, with the help of the Conservancy, we've initiated a study to get a better sense of not only the movements of these animals, but who's out there and the demographics of the population. And ultimately, we're hoping to answer the question we get most frequently, and that is, how many sharks come to Cape Cod? And we think taking this methodical survey approach through the summer, we initiated this study in June, mid-June, and we're going to go into mid-October, weather allowing, getting a sense of who's out there, male, female, size, individuals we know, individuals we don't know, doing some tagging as well to try to get a population size that visits Cape Cod so we can answer that question. So when I leave the studio today, I'm going to go walk onto a boat and we're going to use a spotter plane. Spotter puts us on top of a fish, and then we identify that individual, much like happened last Saturday when the team was out. Who is this fish? Have we seen it before? Is it a male? Is it a female? That kind of information. And then we'll use it to extrapolate to a population size.
And like many other animals, the sharks have specific markings to them. And do you start to be able to tell one from another from the markings?
Yeah, it's remarkable. If you look at the profile of a white shark, you will see that it's got a gray back and a white belly. Well, where that gray meets the white belly is a very distinctive line, and that's almost like a fingerprint. And if you look at certain parts of the shark, namely around the gills where that line is, and then also near the rear portion of the shark, you can get a sense of who that individual is. There are also scars on white sharks that will remain for years that you can use as identifiers, and also very specific shapes associated with the dorsal fin and the tail fin that may differentiate that shark from another one.
Now, the scars are of interest to me. Where would a great white shark get a scar? Because when you see pictures, you do often see scars.
Yeah, it's quite remarkable. These sharks are very, very scarred up, particularly as they get to their very large sizes. And there's generally 2 sources to that. Number one is another white shark, particularly females. When males and females interact during courtship or mating, male will bite the female. And so he'll leave, as you can imagine, very sharp teeth will leave big scars and big cuts on females. And also, let's face it, when a white shark feeds on a seal, the seal doesn't just lay still. Seals have claws, seals have sharp teeth, and they're going to fight back. And there'll be scarring patterns around the face and the eyes associated with a predatory attack.
And you bring up seals, and of course that's a big issue here on Cape Cod, where we have a large and growing population of seals, which are I guess a dietary staple for the sharks. Is that right? That's what draws them to the area?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. The growing seal population has, in essence, rung the dinner bell for these white sharks, and although we do have indications that the population of white sharks on the east coast of the United States is indeed starting to grow, we also know that these animals are being recruited to the area because of these seals, and so they're taking advantage of this now robust food resource.
And I have heard that where this idea that the population of the sharks is growing, where does that come from, that feeling that the population of the great white sharks is growing on the Atlantic coast?
We actually just published a paper, a number of co-authors, the lead author being Toby Curtis out of the National Marine Fisheries Service Lab in Gloucester, just about a week and a half ago. It is a summary of data we've compiled over the course of the last couple of hundred years on the distribution of the white shark, and we've also looked at some trends in the relative abundance of the white shark. And it looks like through the late 60s, 70s, and into the 80s, the population had been hit pretty hard by fishing activity. And then in the late 90s, we put a bunch of regulations in place that prohibit fishermen from keeping white sharks. And since those regulations have been put in place, now we're starting to see the population grow back again. It's still probably about 30 to 40% lower than it should be, but we are at least seeing some positive signs that the population is responding to conservation.
And when you go back into historical archives, which it sounds like that study went back, what do you look for in the writings? Because, of course, back then they might not have identified all the sharks that we have identified now. How do you tell that what they're seeing is a great white?
Well, we've relied quite heavily on scientific publications. News reports are pretty good because they tend to provide a photo. And back in the old days, if you will, white sharks were not just simply photographed while they were swimming around. They were caught by fishermen and brought to the dock, and typically a photograph would end up in an old newspaper and to be archived there. And also scientists were pretty keen on documenting the white sharks as well, because it was kind of a rare event species and still is to a certain degree in most of the Atlantic. So to have a white shark brought to the dock, scientists would typically show up. And a lot of that was happening right in Woods Hole, which, of course, is the ground zero for all marine research here on the East Coast. So, they have lots of records that we've been able to mine over the years.
Now, for people who are going to the beach here and are thinking about, is this a big concern? And some people may be worried, am I swimming with sharks? What do you tell them about that?
Well, our messaging has been pretty consistent over the last several years. I mean, white sharks have always come to the Cape area. When we look back at our records, going back hundreds of years, they've probably been coming here for thousands of years. And folks certainly have been using our beaches for many, many years. We had a major shark attack in 1936, and that was in Buzzards Bay, and that was a white shark. And then we didn't have any bites until 2012. But the bottom line is we do have these animals here. They're large, predatory sharks that do attack and kill seals. The best thing you can do if you're a swimmer is don't be afraid of the water. Just be selective as to where and when you go swimming. And you should be anyway, because the eastern shore of Cape Cod is pretty treacherous when it comes to currents and heavy tides and surf. So you have to be cognizant of your own abilities when it comes to swimming, and you also have to be aware of your surroundings. You've got lots of seals in the area. I would suggest you stay away from the seals. I suggest you don't go too far over your head. Don't go too far from shore. We know the white sharks are primarily from Orleans to Chatham, south to the southern tip of Monomoy, but they will wander up along the eastern shore of Cape Cod up to P-Town and such. So the animals are moving frequently, but they're after the seals. They're not after the people.
And then, of course, it seemed a little bit unusual where a week and a half ago or so that there was a sighting in Cape Cod Bay. And even though you had said at the time when I talked to you about that, not unusual, but we do tend to hear about them on the Atlantic side.
Yeah, most of our effort, of course, in research is on the Atlantic side of Cape Cod. And, our spotter pilots are up there and they see much more than anybody else does. So when our efforts concentrated on the Atlantic side, there's not a lot going on in other parts of the state in terms of spotter pilot activity. So we tend not to see the sharks that are in other parts of the state. Cape Cod Bay, we do have documented reports of white sharks previously and even this time of year. I think that sighting over a week ago, it does indicate to us that big white sharks are indeed in the area. And even though we're not seeing them off the eastern shore, they do sneak around. They do go to other parts.
And I guess one of the main reasons that they tend to be on the other side is that's where the seals are mostly, right? We have the huge colonies of seals at Monomoy. And so a lot of the sightings and perhaps some of your focus has been that area off Chatham. Is that right?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. And one of the technologies we use to monitor the presence and absence of these sharks are called acoustic tags. And that gives us an idea of where the sharks spend their time. And by far, the densest area where they spend their time is adjacent to these big seal haul-outs, and that's primarily off of Monomoy Island. And, public access to the island is extremely limited, which is a good thing. And these seals are hauled up there because there's very little human disturbance. And the sharks are spending the bulk of their time there.
Now, getting back to the study, and if people in the listening audience want to get involved in helping with this, it's a 3 to 5 year study with a nonprofit, the Atlantic White Shark Conservancy. And are there opportunities for people in the public to help out or participate or contribute?
We certainly are trying. Each year it's a struggle to raise the money to get the research done. I think this particular study will be the first of its kind for white sharks in all of the Atlantic Ocean. It's critical to us, at least assessing, not only the numbers of animals that occur around Cape Cod, but the ones, the health of the population in the Atlantic itself. So it's a critical study. We do seek funding above all else, and folks who are interested in supporting us should go to the Atlantic White Shark Conservancy website at atlanticwhiteshark.org. Again, if you are on the water a lot and you're either just a boater, a sailor, or a commercial recreational fisherman, we really appreciate your observations. We're not out as much as we'd like to be, so take pictures of what you see, report them to us, and we can even incorporate that into the study itself.
And you've said you actually have for years been working closely with fishermen who have been reporting sightings to you. Is that right?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. By far the bulk of the sightings going back to the early 1800s come from fishermen's reports and fishermen's interactions with these animals. And actually much of what we know about the species, at least until recently, is comes from fishermen.
And this idea of finding out more about these very unique animals, and one thing that I noticed was every time you spot one, it seems to be a female. And I think you said that. Did you say 90% of them have been females? What do you make of that kind of thing? Where are the male animals?
Well, I look at that information, and I'm thinking it's either our sampling is skewed to some degree, so we have some bias built into our sampling that we're trying to remedy with the study this year, and we'll find that out, or indeed the population is skewed, at least those animals using Cape Cod area, to females, at least those that we've been able to tag and sample. There may be males in the area that are being much craftier or warier of our vessel that we haven't been able to approach. The other thing that may be happening here is that these larger females, and the females may indeed be bigger than the males, are setting up territories, are more dominant than the males and are displacing the males. So the males may be here a little farther offshore or coming in at night, and it might be a simple fact that we're not getting to them. But yeah, we're hoping to resolve the male-female sex ratio this summer.
Well, it's a fascinating subject matter. Unfortunately, we're out of time. I've been talking about sharks with the state's shark expert, Dr. Gregory Scommel. I'm Laura Reckford, and this is Sunday Journal.
This podcast is a presentation of Cape Cod Broadcasting, which is solely responsible for its content. Thank you for listening. For more information, please visit us at capecodbroadcasting.com.